Hello, everybody. My name's James. Welcome to the Clayton and James Show. And today, Clayton tried to phone in sick. He now knows how I feel most weeks. My name is James, and Clayton is with me. How are you, Clayton?
Happy New Year, everyone. I'm all right. Yeah, we'll talk about it. I'm in a weird mood this morning because of the game last night. Don't really know how I feel right now, but I'm sure we'll talk through it later on.
On the pod today, we will be talking about last night's Carabao Cup semi-final first leg. We might touch on tonight's Tottenham game, but I can't really bother to do that too much. We will talk a little bit about implications for FPL because there is a change to the potential outlook following Newcastle's 2-0 win last night. We're going to talk about Julian Lopetegui, but we don't know if by the time you hear this or see this, if he will still be West Ham manager or not. Monaco is the subject of our Euro focus this week. And on this day is a Carabao Cup semi-final, first leg from 12 years ago, Clayton, of which Arsenal will get no mention whatsoever. They might do a little bit. But we will start with the Monday Night Football, where Nottingham Forest are now down to 50 to 1 to win the Premier League,
How much have you put
following
on?
their 3-0 victory at Molineux. They're not a joke. I've been kind of stressing this over the last couple of weeks about Forest. Did you watch it, Clay?
I watched the first half, and then I turned it off. Saw the third goal, but yeah, first half was just like how the hell Forest went into halftime 2-0 up. I have no idea. It's like I feel like this is a bit of a theme on this pod. We have Mr. Lively, don't we? It was Atara a few weeks ago, Strand Larson from Monday Night Football. Like how he didn't score one or two himself, I have no idea. But it was one of them where yeah, Wolves had chances. I thought Wolves looked pretty good in spells as well. But then you obviously told me off air that second half was entirely different. So from what I saw in the first half, no idea how Forest went into halftime 2-0 up, but they they did. And then sounds like they were smart in the second half to make it three.
Yeah, I mean, Wolves had a XG of 1.32 in the first half. In the second half, like 0.27. So there's a big change there. Forest had a really decent XG in the second half, therefore actually having the most of the XG by the end. But yeah, at half time, I think you were very much questioning how Forest were ahead. In fact, there's Wolves' performance in the first half really impressed me. It's the most trouble I've seen Forest have
Yeah,
in
me
a
too.
game for quite some time, actually. And Wolves deserve credit for that. I think look, losing 3-0 to a team, the two clubs fans don't particularly get on, etc. The Morgan Gibbs White thing's kind of added to the narrative, etc. Um, but with the absences that Wolves had, I think they could be pretty impressed with what they come up with. So Semedo and Nori would normally play wing back for them. Semedo unavailable, has got hamstring problems, so probably out for a little while. Nori's had to play left-sided centre back because they've been just so short centre backs. That's a car crash waiting to happen. Like he's decent offensively. Defensively, one on one's fine. Left sided centre back. And you can tell on the first goal, Bueno inside of him is like, go there, go there, go there. He's like, I'm not sure what to do
Instructing,
in this
yeah.
scenario. It's like, I'm not used to being this deep. It was one moment where Forest had a counter and Bueno had gone to press and like Eight Nori and Doherty had become like a jointed two centre backs. You'd be like, this is a mess. I mean, Doherty, I said he played really well at Tottenham. I thought he played well when they beat Manchester United as well. Him on Chris
For
Wood's goal
for the second goal.
on Hudson Odoi. I
Oh.
mean, it's literally just Sales plays like a direct ball into the channel, and next thing Hudson Odoi's there crossing the ball for
I just
Wood.
feel like you're not gonna beat him for pace, and that just felt like basic defending to me. Like when you see it looping like that, just take a step back, like get yourself the other side of him. That just felt like Sunday League defending. That
Yeah, Craig Dawson wasn't available. Toti Gomez is unavailable for probably the rest of this month as well. Andre, who Vitor Pereira didn't mention his press comments, really, it's good players, really tidy on the ball. He didn't play. And obviously Cunha had his suspension. And you know what? When it's running for you, it's running for you. How many times you look at a team and you think, they just have no luck when they're towards the bottom of the table. But sometimes when you're at the top end, you do. And I'm watching Forest in that first half and I think this is the complete opposite of it just won't run your way. Like you're running so hot and good here. I mean, it shouldn't have been 2-0 up at half time. It's a little bit laughable, actually.
yeah, I think yeah we said about Strand Larson, right? He had two, but I must say the one thing that was quite poetic was you spoke about the kind of rivalry and the Gibbs White thing, like the fact that it was him that went and scored with all the booing, some of the chants that were going on and stuff. Like you
Some
just
of them are
couldn't.
not very nice, by the
No, not
way.
at all.
Yeah. We can go too far with this sort of thing.
Yeah, so like it was very poetic that he got the goal, I must say. But yeah, Forest, I don't think deserved to be 2-0 up, but then you have to say they were. And then what you kind of said to me before we went live was they switched it up a bit tactically in the second half and completely shut Wolves out.
Yeah, they sorted it out. I think, like I said, just to kind of finish on Wolves, like Cunha, as far as we're aware, will be back for the next game. The run of fixtures they've got now is pretty shy. It's Newcastle away, Chelsea away, Arsenal at home, Villa at home, Liverpool away, Bournemouth away. I would say that if you told me now, obviously Cunha will almost certainly be back for the game at Newcastle next week. If you told me that's the back line next week at Newcastle, I think Isak's going to get the armband. I think.
Ooh, okay.
I think so. Because I don't see how they won't give up chances with that back line. But I like what Vitor Pereira's doing, actually. They're nowhere near as bad as what that 3-0 result was. I tell you who impressed me as well was Rodrigo Gomez.
I was hoping you were going to say the Scotsman, Elliot Anderson there, which we'll talk about later.
I'll get onto the Scotsman Elliot Anderson. Yeah, shout out to one of our patrons, David Beaton. Yeah, he's one. The Wolves guys were really high on him in pre-season. And you can definitely see there's something about him
Yeah,
where there's a player there. And it does seem bizarre that O'Neill pretty much, I think he played at you game week 1. And then O'Neill took him out
can't.
of the team. We hardly saw him again. So, yeah, I think that Wolves had a lot of players missing. The fixtures coming up are bad. But if they continue to perform like that,
Encouraging
they'll be all
signs though.
right.
Yeah, definitely.
They'll be all right. For Forest, I mean, this mad run continues. Defensively, excellent in the second half. Nuno, with half hour to go, changed and went to a back five, and we've seen them kind of do that like ad hoc a little bit more recently. And I said to your camera before we started, so I think going forward in games where they're winning now, we can expect them literally on that last half hour. Here we go,
You
back
said
five.
it was with half hour to go. What was the period of play before that like? Was it similar to the first half
They were
or?
getting better. I mean, clearly Nuno probably, to be honest, probably given a bit of bollocking at half time with the amount of chances that they've give up. I mean, you mentioned Larson. He said one header straight at Sells. Sells played really well in goal, and there's the one where Murillo's got back on the line and cleared it off the line. I mean, 9 times out of 10, it's going in, and you've got a whole different, completely dynamic of that. I think the back four strong. I think Nico Williams he's beginning to kind of need a real conversation in terms of his potential for FPL at like 4.3 because he's so much cheaper than the others. Again, kind of add a caution that we have stressed a little bit over the last 2 weeks or so is could Forest buy a left back in this window? But he's definitely going to stay ahead of Alex Moreno now. I mean, that's pretty clear. Murillo and Milenkovic are obviously key at centre back. Oloreno is a player I've spoken about a lot, really like. And offensively, obviously Wood, talisman, scoring goals, another return here. He felt like the only real kick in the game he'd had, but he's scored. I think that was his first goal with his left foot all season, actually. But the guys behind are so dynamic.
Yeah, it's got the balance of like pace, power, technique, flair. It's a really balanced trio.
Perfect setup for a counter-attacking team.
Yeah.
Hudson-Odoi and Elanga are outstanding ball carriers. Hudson-Odoi always strikes that there's another level to go. I think, by the way, he's only got 18 months left on his contract. And it's not a suggestion that he wants to leave Nottingham Forest or anything like that, but it might be one to watch out for in the summer because he's getting back to the levels, I think, that got him like in the England team when he was 19. I'm not saying getting back in the England team, but getting back to those levels. It feels like it's been a while since he's had an injury that's kind of blighted so much of his career. I think it might be a name to keep an eye on in the summer because he's at a level now that's looking like a really good player again. Not one I dive into for fantasy. I've seen a little bit of chat about Morgan Gibbs White as well. And I don't know if that's more because people are specifically looking for a midfielder maybe rather than a forward at the moment. But I think I would, if you're going to do that, I would find the money for the talisman would,
Yeah.
if you want an offensive one. But yeah, they managed the end of the game really well. Elliot Anderson's pass on the first goal opens up the whole game. And then when they're running at you, they're really deep. Then they run at you and like, it's danger here. You can feel it. And like I said, Eight Norrie kind of tracking into Elanga's like, I'm really not comfortable with this position playing left-sided centre back. Uh, yeah, the Elliot Anderson Scotland joke comes about because he was in the Scotland squad and kind of changed his mind and decided he wanted to play for England. Let me tell you, if he continues playing the way he has played this season, he will not be far from an England call up. I actually think that's worked out as one of the signings of the season so far. Every
Yeah,
time I
no,
watch him, I feel better and better about him as a footballer.
yeah, and I think the vibe at the time was like, oh, was that just a PSR friendly, you sort me out, I sort you out sort of thing, isn't it? And yeah, I agree. I think he's been absolutely fantastic for them.
Yeah, really good. Great for Forest. Obviously, look, he's Liverpool next. Then there is another run of fixtures where they can expect to do more. I would not be at all shocked if they take points off of Liverpool next Tuesday. You can visualise Nottingham Forest winning that game 1-0.
Yeah, I think that'll be a good game. Looking forward to watching that.
Well,
I think
it's
just
joint second versus top Tuesday night, isn't it? So,
Yeah, just one other thing is like I know in the first half I said like, I don't know how they were 2-0 up, but there were periods where I watched them defending and like they do look. I know they concede a lot of chances, but they do look compact. But then their ability to go from compact to expansive within seconds was quite impressive in different spells I saw. So yeah, really good job from Nuno there.
well, teams will have this kind of fear of overcommitting against them, and you do feel a want to overcommit because, let's be honest, they're quite defensive. They do go counter-attacking. It works for them, but it's an offensive play at the same time because the more space you can get to the three players behind Wood to go and ball carry, yeah, you're in. I think they probably still go with a back four against Liverpool, but like I said, if they get themselves ahead, they will go to a back three, and I think we can see that more in games moving forward. They've got kind of the strongest team available at the moment. All these little things help. Their only danger, really, to not finish in the top five, I guess, would be the form of like Manchester City and Newcastle is going to have a big impact on it, and I guess Chelsea to a certain extent as well. But as you and I have covered so many times recently, like they've got to shut out the noise from elsewhere. They're 2 points per game. Right, they get anywhere near that, they will walk towards Champions League qualification. I don't. I think 1.5 points per game is probably nearly going to do it for them, considering we're so confident the fifth will get in the Champions League.
I think if they can put some more points on the board before their run turns, because then they've got a tricky period, right? Which I guess starting game week 25, Fulham away, where they then got Newcastle away, Arsenal, City, Ipswich away, a few there. Like if they can give themselves some buffer room, and then, well, I don't know, they're the sort of team in the tough games you can see them coming away with
Yeah,
points
but
as well.
look at the run afterwards. After they play City, Trent, it's worth saying those Arsenal City games are at home.
Yeah,
Newcastle away is a fixture they actually won last season. Chris Wood got a hat trick in. You might remember. Their run after the City game up to playing Chelsea on final day is really good. And also, again, from the FPL perspective, you know currently at the moment that their fixture at Ipswich in game week 29 will happen. It's a decent fixture, I would say, particularly for the defensive guys. So the investment's going to come now. The only thing is like for those like me who haven't been on all season, is it like, oh, is this going to change or have I got to do
I'm the same. I'm
something
like, what
about
do I
it?
do here?
I'm kind of wondering if like Nico Williams is going to be the out if they don't go and invest. I'd be so gutted to go there though, and then oh yeah, they've gone and bought a left back.
Yeah, like you said, maybe wait and see on him to see what happens in the window. But yeah, elsewhere, yeah, I think I need to sort out no Forest in my team.
They're doing extraordinarily well, and this is great for the league.
Yeah, I hope
It
they finish in the top
really
four. I
is.
really do.
Yeah, there's unless you've got a particular dislike for Nottingham Forest,
Of course.
there's no reason to want them not to. I mean, you and I have had discussions. I think on our transfer window show on Patreon last Tuesday, we had a big discussion about there will be a limitation ultimately in the long term. I don't think you can be this. I don't even want to say negative. This defensive and be in a position where the narrative doesn't change and expectation doesn't change, and then you want more, you want to play a different way. And I'm not sure if Nuno in the long term will be able to do it, but he's being the running for manager of the year at the moment, wouldn't he? Have to be.
100%. 100%. Yeah. Him and Slot are the obvious two, but yeah, he's yeah, 100% in the conversation.
I am not chasing Nottingham Forest players this week. Ultimately, they are still playing the strongest team in the league as it stands next week. So I've seen a lot of narrative of the Forest are killing me. Okay, cool. Well, let them try and kill me for another week. I'm not chasing that because ultimately, if I go and buy Nico Williams this week as an example,
Yeah, what are you hoping
am I
for,
playing him
mate?
against Liverpool? No.
Nah.
So let's assess this
Timing.
afterwards. Yeah, absolutely. Right, last night, huge result for Newcastle. A lot of our Newcastle patrons were saying, 1-0 defeat here would be great. Right, fancy the second leg. They've walked away with a 2-0 victory and are obviously now huge favourites to make it through to the final. Give you a reaction from the Arsenal perspective, pal.
Yeah. Well, yeah. First of all, well done to Newcastle. That is a great result. I spoke to a lot of Newcastle fans prior to it, and same thing you just said. A lot of them were saying if we can keep it to a few of the ones I spoke to said 2-0 max. Like they backed themselves in the second leg. So to come away with that, absolutely amazing. And even just for their fans, like on the road in the last 10 days, some of the results they've had for the travelling fans, like that's absolutely
Manchester United,
unreal,
Tottenham,
bro.
and Arsenal in
Yeah.
little
So
over a
like,
week. Yeah, it's
fair
incredible.
play to them because that's some mileage. But like in terms of my reaction from the game. I don't know. I feel like there's a few different kind of narratives doing the round, and my head kind of is a combination of all of them from different parts of this game. Like first half, okay, let me rewind to team news drops, and I see the team, and I'm feeling confident, like being totally transparent and honest. Like Partey's back in midfield, Timber's at right back, Havertz back leading the line, which I prefer. Front three, like sorry, the wide forwards, like not amazing, but don't really have any alternatives at the minute. But overall, looking at the 11, thinking, yeah, that I think that's the strongest we can do. I liked Lewis Skelly's shout at left back instead of Calafiori for this game as well. So going into the game feeling confident. And the first half, I mean, I feel like we've done patron pods recently where Arsenal have won, and I've been critical, right? And I've been disappointed in performances and seen lots of room for improvement. First half, I thought we were great. I thought we were I was going to say absolutely brilliant. That would have been a stretch. I thought we were very good first half with the amount of chances that we created. And like, I think part of it was Newcastle came to play as well. Like I think they were smart with their game plan in that there were periods in the game where they kind of mid-blocked. They had their bank of 4 or 5, and then the spacing in between the defensive line and midfield. But that wasn't always the case. They were quite aggressive in their press in certain periods as well. Excuse me. And I think as a result, it gave Arsenal space to try and play. And I think that's how the Martinelli chance came. Like there were obviously a couple from set pieces in there as well.
No, Arsenal from set pieces, surely not.
But yeah, like I thought first half, I was encouraged. I was really encouraged, and their goal kind of came against the run of play, and that's where I was at first half. Was like, how are we 1-0 down when I felt like there were 2, 3 goals out there for us in the first half. I'm sure there's another chance that's escaped my mind right now, but going into half time, I was fairly calm. Like it was the first performance in a while where we were not winning, where I was like, "Do you know what? I feel okay here. I feel like if we play like that again in the second half, we'll be all right." And then 6 minutes into the second half, I mean, Isaac, what a player! Like Declan Rice, I'm kind of disappointed in for the second goal because I feel like he was continuously scanning, but I was like, you're scanning, but you're not really watching where Isaac is. And like Isaac managed to get the ball in a dangerous area, take the shot. Gordon running off Timber again, someone I thought could have done better there, Timber. But yeah, that 2-0 up, and I think this is my concern. So I feel I touched on narratives, right? I feel like I've seen a lot of Arsenal was shit. Newcastle's game plan was excellent. This, that. I don't necessarily agree with all of it. I've also seen like from Eddie Howe, Anthony Gordon, them describe it as like riding a bit of their luck, a bit of a smash and grab. Like, I think there's elements of everything in there. I think the first half was an element of smash and grab, while Newcastle also executed parts of the game smartly while riding their luck. I think once it got to 2-0, this was my concern. I actually thought we got worse as the game went on. So first off, I thought we were very good. Once it went to 2-0, I didn't have that confidence in me thinking we were going to go and bring it back, let alone score. And then like Jesus and Jorginho come on for Trossard Party. I don't think it was necessarily because of them that it dropped off, but then Newcastle made their triple subs. And I just felt like after 2-0, Newcastle managed it exceptionally. They obviously switched to no striker and defended it very well. But
It
yeah, I
went
don't.
5-0 at the end, mate.
Yeah, but like, and rightly so. Like that's smart game management. But like, to summarize, sorry, I know that was a long-winded explanation. I've just got a lot of thoughts on last night because I don't think Arsenal were as bad in the whole game as people were making out. I thought we were good in the first half, poor once we were 2-0 down and looked a bit devoid of ideas. But at the same time, like while I'm giving credit to Newcastle, I don't think it was this tactical masterclass that is also being described. I think there were tactically smart things that were executed that required a little bit of luck as well, is where my head is at.
Yeah, look, I think you could subscribe to a few different narratives here. You could certainly subscribe to Arsenal having four big chances and 14 shots in the first half as one narrative, for example. That ultimately in the end was six big chances and 23 shots in total. But within that, Dubravka made the same number of saves as David Raya. So you were wasteful, I
Very.
think is the biggest word here. I mean, you think
And
of
that's
things
our own fault. Yeah.
that the Havertz header in the second half, that normally
That's
puts
the
that
one that escaped my mind.
That's
Yeah.
that normally puts out away with his eyes closed, right?
That
I
was
mean,
the exact.
the problem here might have been that he did close his eyes and it came off his shoulder. But that was like a oh wow moment, and kind of at that point I thought it ain't going to be their day here.
Even,
Actually,
even that, yeah. No, thanks for reminding. That was definitely the one that I forgot. Like even that, when it was looping, I didn't feel that element of he's gonna go bury that. Like, yeah, I thought he closed his eyes. He almost looked like I don't know if he was a bit worried about keeper coming out and clattering him as well. But like, yeah, that we were wasteful, and that's on us. I think this is the thing. I've never been this person that's like we created more, so we deserve to win. Like part of football is creating it. Part of football is putting it in the back of the net. So you can't then go and be righteous saying we deserve to win. But from an analytical perspective, I'm more encouraged about the performance in the first half than I was like when we bloody beat Ipswich. I think there's signs for me to feel like, okay, it's not the end of the world in terms of predicting future performances. But in terms of this cup tie, yeah, not great.
it's a fascinating game to reflect on though, because you have created an XG of over three, right? And if
Was
I
it? Was
told
it
you
over
that
three?
if I told you that pre kickoff, you'd be like, that's great. But within that, and obviously, I'm watching it from a perspective of like, fuck your lot, right? I obviously don't want you to score. So I intrinsically have a greater fear watching you. Ah, they're going to score, aren't they? But I didn't, mate.
Is that
I didn't think you were going to score.
was that throughout the game or at what period?
Certainly, like the last half hour from 2
Yeah,
nil, thinking this is probably going to finish like this.
I shared the same.
And kind of really thinking you kind of need to score in this game now. Not that you can't go there and listen, you win 2-0 and the game goes to pens, right? It's not like you can't still go through. It's not you won there 2-0 a couple of years ago. It will be a weird pressure for Newcastle because you kind of go into this bear pit atmosphere, but actually the best thing Newcastle will do is go, come on, then and have it, and you're going to have to overcommit more than normal. So it felt like you had score. I didn't feel like you would, mate.
No,
And
neither did I.
you couldn't help thinking. We discussed so much about the absence of Odegaard earlier in the season. I don't think he was good last night, by the way. I don't know if he came back and he had that adrenaline and was great to start with, and now he's struggling to hit his 100% level.
Yeah,
That's how it
possibly.
feels to
He was
me.
someone that he obviously didn't start against Brighton because of illness, so we don't really know. But yeah, I thought he started the game, right? But yeah,
But
maybe you're right. It
we
was
had a
adrenaline.
discussion on Monday's podcast, and I know you've spoken about this previously, about being a little bit concerned for Arsenal that they're lacking a little bit of individualism at the moment. Like, to be honest, that Isak player that could just win you the game by itself. You're looking around, you think it's got to be Odegaard at the moment. So if he's under it, you need people to contribute together because anybody who watched that game last night would have certainly gone, yeah, shit, Bukayo Saka is a really, really sizable miss here,
Yeah,
massively.
this is the thing though. I think it was a game of two halves. Like I didn't first half, I didn't feel that. Like I felt we were playing through them. There was space, like the way we manipulated it to get Martinelli into the position for him to hit the post. I thought was a good move. Like there's definitely elements of this Arsenal side that is screaming for improvement. But in terms of the full 90 last night, I don't think it's as binary as yeah, in the first half we were kind of as stale. Yeah, maybe I had a completely different read on that first half, but that was how I kind of felt watching it. It was the second half where I didn't feel like we were going to score, especially once it went to 2-0.
The other thing that has to be added is the goals you conceded were shockers, mate. They're so soft, mate.
Yeah, that first one pissed me off more, to be honest. That is one where like it's a scramble, right? Like you got to be stronger there. You got to keep your foot through it and clear it and stuff. And yeah, it's just soft, so soft. The second one, like yeah, I'm annoyed with little details on Rice and Timber and like where the ball landed, but I'm more pissed off about the first one. That one's really, really soft, which you don't expect from this Arsenal team.
No, you don't normally concede soft goals, mate.
Yeah, but that's
And
football,
there
isn't it?
was slow reactions in and around the penalty area. and
Yeah,
that's normally like a real strength for you. I also thought it's worth saying Thomas Partey, I've spoken about a lot recently, been really important for you in midfield. I thought he was
he
shite
was
last night.
anonymous.
Yeah,
Yeah,
shite, man.
he did
He was
one clipped ball over
looked
the
like he
top.
was
That was good.
really labouring, I thought.
Yeah, I thought so as well. Yeah, there was one clipped ball he did over the top in the first half, which was quite nice. But other than that, yeah, I thought he was anonymous.
From Newcastle's perspective, outstanding. Um, and it's easy to forget that Bruno Guimaraes was
And Show.
unavailable, suspended. No Fabian Schär. The kind of heroic performances of Sven Botman to come back from an ACL and play through them Tottenham and Arsenal games is quite something. And to do it as a right-sided centre back, which is obviously way
Yeah.
less comfortable for him. If Lewis Hall had been performing like he's performing now 12 months ago, you and I might be sitting here thinking, oh my God, England won the European Championship, mate.
I knew you where you were going with that. Yeah.
Genuinely, wow.
I mean, we've been talking
Wow.
about needing a left back for England, right? I feel like it's staring us in the face at the minute.
Absolutely outstanding. And I felt with him as well, he had like a physical aura about him within the game. We seemed like strong, like he knew he was in a big game element and was going to show that he was a big game player. I thought defensively he was outstanding. Livramento just barely gets beat at right back. Absolutely, that could end up being England's fullbacks going
Yeah.
forward. And to be honest, it could be Newcastle's fullbacks for the next decade. That's really strong in terms of fullbacks. Dan Burn is like a giant and seems to get himself in the way of everything. They'll have Share to now come back and compete, which I guess ultimately will probably push Burn out the team. Sandro Tonali, I thought was incredible. There's been kind of real big eyes on him recently because he's kind of freed up Joel Linton and Guimaraes. But to face the test of this kind of opponent and then look so calm and controlled, positionally outstanding, brilliant. And the front three, excellent. And Isak is levels.
Yeah, he is a joke.
He is, I was thinking this last night, James, you can buy Haaland or Isak. Who do you buy? And that's not an FPL question, by the way, because there's definitely only one
It's good
answer
you
for that.
specified that, to be fair.
I meant like, if one of them came to play for my team, be realistic, James. I'm obviously not being realistic. I was like, who would you rather?
For me, for the Arsenal team in the way we play, it's Isak.
I mean, for my team, it would be Isak as well, I think. What a player. And I know did you see when they got off the bus and
No, I didn't.
someone shouted, "Welcome home, Alex." Have you seen
No,
that?
I've not seen no.
Yeah, because there's been a lot of links to Isak going to Arsenal. And I saw a lot of people kind of blowing on Twitter last night about, yeah, bid for him now, 80, 90 million. And I saw, I think even AFTV's social Twitter account even tweeted after the game, pay whatever it costs.
I've blocked that shit. I don't see
It's,
any of that nonsense.
it's gonna cost a lot more than you think it is because that 100% is not moving from Newcastle for anything less than 100 million, in my opinion.
No.
What a player. There's no contract issue there with him in terms of like length of it or anything. There is a possibility that in the summer Newcastle may have to cut something from a financial perspective. Not because the owners don't have enough money, but if they need to comply with PSR or something. But unless Newcastle don't qualify for the Champions League, I can't see him wanting to leave there at this stage. If they weren't so far behind, you'd be looking at them at the moment and thinking, could they make a late run for the title?
Mm.
I think they're playing that well.
With how they're playing.
They're on 35 points from 20 games. They are 11 points behind Liverpool, having played a game more. It's too much. But if Newcastle were at this moment, say in Forest position, I think you'd be thinking, could they?
Yeah,
They've got
possibly.
good fixtures coming up, three of the next four at home, and then Southampton away. Then there's some tests. Then there's another good run again. Then there's a kind of tough finish for them as well. But they are playing ever so well. You've got Guimaraes and Sher to come back into this, which then effectively is the strongest lineup. And Nick Pope, obviously, as well. We think that might have been Dubravka's last game
Yeah, I've
last
seen
night.
well, when I was watching it,
There's
I
a
think
deal in place for him to go to Al Shabab in Saudi Arabia.
yeah, it looked like
Newcastle
he was
just need
saying
to give the
goodbye
green
to the
light on
away
that, which
end
I
there.
presume is Pope's back, or there's significant rumours that they're going to buy James Trafford from Burnley.
Okay.
So yeah, they've got a system now with Tonali that's absolutely working up front, a superstar forward. I was watching the game last night, Clayton, and I was remembering what I said when I was watching the draw for the semi-final that I'd have wanted Arsenal of the three in terms of mainly didn't want to play you in the final. I was watching the game last night and I was thinking maybe without Saka, I'd rather play Arsenal in the final.
Yeah, it's funny that I don't know. Like, I think
I
a
think you're
lot
on
of
mute,
people.
mate.
Am I on mute? Can you not hear me? No.
I can now. Yeah. Where did you go?
Sorry, I don't know what happened there. Yeah, I was wondering why you were ignoring me. No, I was saying I don't know. Like, I don't think last night was a 2-0 game. Again, well done to Newcastle, but and agree, like they've probably been the best formed team in the league the last 6, 7 games. And I'm not saying they didn't deserve to win because we missed our chances, but I think there's a lot of over-indexing going on based on the scoreline here, where yeah, I thought it was a very much a game of two halves, personally. Yeah, don't know. I had a slightly different read on it from that, especially that first half. Like, I don't think Newcastle's game plan would have been to concede the amount of chances in the first half they did. But I think a lot of people are only going to remember, oh, it was 2-0. And it's like I see a lot of similarities to conversations I was having like 12 months ago where we had a similar but different game against West Ham. Like, I think it was 2-0 as well, actually. Like, created so many chances, didn't score. Everyone was saying like, about Arsenal and this and that, and then went on a ridiculous streak, scoring a ridiculous amount of goals. I must say, I don't see that coming this season, but like the performance, especially in the first half in this game, was better than what we did against Brighton, against Ipswich. Like, so, yeah, I think there's a lot of outcome-based analysis based on last night, in my opinion.
The biggest caveat for Arsenal is kind of what you just said, that you had this exact moment last season where you'd lost to West Ham and Fulham, you
It
then
was a
lost the FA
Liverpool
Cup
FA.
third round game to Liverpool, and it was like, yeah, this is bad. They're not playing well. One goal scored in three defeats in a row, etc. And then the run started. It's Manchester United at home Sunday, Tottenham at home Wednesday, then Aston Villa at home on a Saturday.
Three big
I,
games.
I suspect it's going to define a lot of what happens next.
Yeah,
Big game
big
on
time.
Sunday, first and foremost. You looked, for the first time, I thought for a while, quite fatigued last night. I think of like what I said about, say, Thomas Partey's performance last night. That's dangerous
Yeah,
with
I don't
those
know.
three games coming up, all good counter-attacking teams.
Even I thought we looked fatigued against Brighton as well. Something I've been saying. I think again, people don't want to accept the context that has happened to Arsenal when you give explanations, but I think it's just been a sequence of things that has led to us not really having a fully fit and available squad for a consistent period of time. And I agree. I think we look fatigued and stuff, but you have to get on with it, right? So it's a concern, but can't really do anything else about it, to be honest. Just have to keep going.
I, by the way, do not expect my team to be in the Carabao Cup final quite clearly, although intrigued how Liverpool respond to some of the vulnerabilities we saw from them on Sunday. I don't want to sit here and say I would take a defeat tonight, but I would like to go to Anfield in 4 weeks' time with a chance. That's all that I ask for. So if
What
we,
scoreline would you perceive as having
to
a
be
chance for
honest, as
the
long as we
second
don't
leg?
get battered tonight, if you lose by one for us, like, can we go to Liverpool and win? Well, by that point, you've got Van der Ven, Romero, hopefully fit. You know, everyone, Baru, Doggy, be expected fit by the time the second leg comes around. And I also think that's something to note where it might be beneficial for you a little bit is that the second leg isn't in 2 weeks. Fast forward four, I think you've got 7 games before the second leg with Newcastle. Now, by that point, you might hit that form streak and Newcastle might come out of theirs. It doesn't help you, though, that you play Manchester City at home 3 days before the Newcastle game. And Newcastle spacing is much better in and around it as well. There will be no reason for Newcastle, by the way, to rotate in many games. I did check that last night. I was thinking, or could they save themselves in a league game for the semi-final or something? There's not really a need looking at their fixtures. So I would be very surprised if the game with 21 deadline passes and Anthony Gordon is not in my FPL team. I think
Fair play.
that's priority that needs to happen. Of course, the knock on is that as it stands now, Newcastle would be projected to blank in game week 29. There is impacts on that in terms of Arsenal players, obviously, also Chelsea players and Crystal Palace players. So we're going to do chip strategy in a lot more detail next Monday after the FA Cup third round games. But for now, the projection has to change. that Newcastle and Palace would blank in 29 and Arsenal Chelsea goes ahead. Now, in terms of game week 29 planning, that's possibly going to alter some people's strategies if Newcastle make it to the final, because there'll be people sitting there with maybe five from Arsenal Chelsea who suddenly become available. And the Arsenal players, I think, unless they can't turn this little run around, largely you probably want to hold on to. And a reminder, before game week 29, Chelsea have Southampton at home and Leicester at home in consecutive weeks. So I get that it wouldn't be ideal to maybe have, say, what I've got, five players from Arsenal, Chelsea going into that fixture, but I'd look at more of the other stuff going around it and going, yeah, you're fine. We'll take it whatever it is on the day, but the fixtures before are fine. Also worth saying, in terms of Newcastle and Palace, Palace have a good run in the build up towards 29. I'd say between now and 29, their toughest fixture would be Newcastle away. Other than that, it's either Manchester United away or Fulham away. So good run for them. Newcastle's next four is outstanding. Then there's a tougher three. Then they've got West Ham before the blank. And then after the blank, they've got Brentford, Leicester, and then Manchester United at home. So this needs a little bit more thought. The landscape has changed a little bit. We will look at it in more detail next
I
week.
I'm very much on the headspace that I am waiting till the pod on Monday to make any decisions.
But I think
No pressure.
ultimately, like Newcastle winning last night doesn't make me think, oh, I'm not buying Gordon, because it's still
No.
ultimately would look at the next four and go, that's great. And it might even ultimately lead me into Diaz or back to Jota when the timing's
Yeah,
right,
it's still
perhaps.
many game weeks away.
And it also doesn't at this stage put me off of, say, if I sacrifice Trent, Daniel Munoz is definitely maybe the one. So I'm going to say definitely the one. He's not. It's probably him or Kanate. But it wouldn't, that with 29, them now maybe blanking, wouldn't put me off going off necessarily to Munoz. Because I put myself in a position where I'd have four from Newcastle Palace and five from Arsenal Chelsea. So in terms of planning, it might just be that I need one extra transfer, maybe if it's Newcastle Palace rather than Arsenal Chelsea. So I wouldn't, by buying Munoz, I wouldn't be putting myself in a worse position than what I'm in for 29. And it's worth separating that at the moment. Arsenal Chelsea players, Newcastle Palace players. In terms of swinging the Tottenham Liverpool projection, I think Tottenham would have to win by two tonight for that projection to change. I'm not even sure that that would change it. I don't know if Tottenham won 3-1 tonight. I I don't know how the bookies would call that in terms of who
No,
would
it'd
make the
probably still
final. I
be
think
quite even.
probably be slightly Tottenham, just purely because of the distance and the fact Romero and Van der Ven would be back by then. But if Tottenham win by one, Liverpool are still going to be favourites to make the final. I think it's pretty clear. Don't think Tottenham will be winning tonight. And by the time we get to tonight, I have no idea if Julian Lopetegui will be West Ham manager or not. The
I was
time
just
is 10:48 a.m. Do we have any updates, Clayton?
No, I was literally checking Slack as you were talking there. No new updates, but obviously they did cancel their scheduled press conference this afternoon, right? So I think that's sent social media into a bit of a frenzy on what's going on.
I'd also say, by the way, I've just seen snow projected. I've just had an alert come up on my phone. Hopefully, it's very, very, very heavy snow.
Wait, where's that in London or?
Yeah, yeah. You know where we
Okay.
live, Clates. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, fair
yeah.
play.
Not that far from Tottenham. Yeah, it's projected to snow from about 1 o'clock today, pretty much all day. So no, there's no danger to the game tonight whatsoever. Yeah, they've cancelled Lopetegui's press conference today. That we know. They're playing at Aston Villa on Friday night. Hence, that's why he was going to go so early in the week with his presser.
Heavy rumours of Potter doing the rounds, right?
So it's pretty much been basically from, and me and Suj didn't know this when we recorded the podcast Monday, but basically while we were recording it, it was like, yeah, he's gone. Was some of the noise that were going around. So we kind of fast forward 48 hours and he's still not. It sounds like Potter's probably got an agreement in place, but there's also been speculation that they've only offered him the job till the end of the season, which seems barking mad to me.
Yeah, same. Like,
Offer it or don't.
obviously it's speculation, so it may not be correct, but working on the assumption that's true, like, what do you think the logic is behind that?
Well, I don't know what West Ham would have to think short term for. Like, if West Ham were 18th and they're like, we don't want to commit to giving you 5 million a year for 4 years because we could go down. West Ham aren't going to go down. There's no danger of that at all. So I don't know why you would have like shortism thoughts on it, and it just sends out wrong signals. If that's true, and we don't know that it is. But if that's true, if you're Potter and you've already turned down a few other jobs, as we know, Leicester, Ajax, maybe one or two others we don't know about, West Ham's offering me a job for 4 months.
Doesn't feel you would.
What's in it for you?
Yeah, like
He did this
nothing.
before with Moyes.
Yeah, true.
I think the first time he was in charge, I'm pretty sure it was like, yeah, till the end of the season. And they were like, oh, yeah, you're good. Do the
Uh,
next season. Then midway through the next season, they were like, yeah, you're not the guy either.
There's weirdly there's things behind the likes of like Moyes, Allardyce, managers like that. Not to group them together because they're very different, but like there are themes behind managers like that where you can get the kind of short termism. With a manager like Potter, I don't see him as someone that will come in for 4 months and be able to fully imprint everything he wants. Like he is
Agreed.
someone that
It's
I
long term,
think
isn't it?
yeah. So that doesn't make any sense to me.
No, and that's only speculation. And I'm pretty confident Graham Potter won't be signing on a 4 month contract. It's more likely to be a 4.5 year contract. And I will add, I certainly think that would be a good appointment for West
Me
Ham.
too. I think that'd be very good. It's interesting because they've made a conscious decision to head in a different stylistic direction, right? But clearly the fan base aren't really happy with the process of how it's going. So it'll be interesting to see how much time Potter gets and what the expectations are amongst the fan base.
Of course, it could also be someone else, but I think it would be fair to say, again, it's 10:51 a.m. on Wednesday morning, that Julian Lopetegui is not going to be manager for West Ham for much longer. Even if he does the Villa game Friday night, the situation at the moment is fairly farcical. Like no one's coming out from the club and leaking something and going, yeah, he's still our guy. Or like Tottenham have been kind of keen to put stuff in the press recently and say,
It's
like, look,
like
we're
dead man
backing
walking,
the
isn't it? It's
manager,
horrible.
so shut up, kind of fucking gig. West Ham could do that. They're not. They're allowing this speculation to go on. So, yeah, you assume a change is inevitable. I know there's a lot of people feel like he's being treated pretty badly. I think West Ham have done this sort of thing before. It's also worth saying I've seen my club act like this, as West Ham aren't alone in treating their manager badly at kind of the end point. And West Ham ultimately obviously have to look at their own interests first and foremost in terms of what they do next. But if you're Lopetegui, you've probably got half a mind to just resign, haven't you? Other than the fact you ain't gonna you're waiting for your payoff, isn't it?
Well, that's
Essentially.
it. Like, why would you resign when you're probably going to get a payout?
Yeah, there is that because I don't know. Maybe that's what they're hoping.
Game of chicken.
Do
Possibly.
you want to do this because we're kind of making your position untenable? Do you want to be here? I mean, West Ham ultimately are going to obviously have to pay him a decent size of compensation, I suppose. I don't know how long he signed for. It might have only been 2 years, maybe.
Yeah,
I'm
not
not
sure.
sure.
Just on the kind of original thing we brought up, the kind of cancelling this scheduled press conference. Do you think that is like, yeah, it's done?
I mean, how uncomfortable would that be for Lopetegui to do that press conference? That's what I said. West Ham have done nothing to defend him. West Ham could put something in the media today and say, look, we're aware of the rumours going around. You don't have to publicly put out a statement, but you've got
Just
journalists that
address
you
the
can
elephant in the
leak
room.
to, and then they'll leak it out and go, West Ham are not intending to change their manager at the moment. Simple as that, right? There's no indication of that. So, Lopetegui is going to sit in his press conference, and the first thing he's going to get asked is, like, do you think you'll be in charge Friday night? I mean, just from a human level, who
Yeah,
wants
it's not
that?
right.
No, of course it's not. So, understand why that's been cancelled. You'd even think that even to do the game Friday night, the game's live, I think on BBC maybe. He's going to get asked before the game. He's going to get asked after the game. That's uncomfortable. I don't think he'll be in charge Friday night.
No, neither do I. I think too
And
much
that game's
smoke right now.
important to West Ham because essentially, season's over if they lose.
Yeah, who's it against? Against Villa.
They're away to Villa.
Yeah. Yeah, big
You're
game.
highly unlikely to qualify for Europe via the league. They're not going to get sucked into relegation trouble. So the season kind of ends for them if they lose Friday night. It's a huge game for them without arguably the best player in Jared Bowen. And the other irony is, I know they lost kind of badly at City, but it's kind of everyone's identified. They played all right,
Yeah, that's what
actually.
Such said to me as well. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think changes come in. I think by the time you hear or watch this, he may well be out of a job. I'll probably be surprised if we're doing a podcast tomorrow and he's still not in charge. Or to a better point, me and Suj will be recording our Patreon podcast this afternoon, Tottenham, and we'll get Suj's view on how he feels about things. And I don't know if he's going to make that.
Yeah,
You got to
possibly not.
assume it. You got to assume a change is happening. Just briefly on Everton, it's gone a little bit quieter on Sean Dyche the last couple of days with lots of speculation on Monday that something the axe might be kind of wheeled in. That kind of speculation feels like it's calmed down in the media. I don't know if that's a consequence of all the Lopetegui stuff a little bit, but I think Sean Dyche is on the edge now at Everton as well. Absolutely. Euro focus, Clates. Let's head to France or not France or Some place with like a, what is it, less than a 1 mile square radius.
That's what it is,
What are
yeah.
they? A country, a principality? What are
They
they?
are, by definition, an independent city state, sorry, and they're based in the Principality of Monaco. Every day's a school day in football, isn't it? We picked another team with an ambiguous founding date, though. So, there's three dates I've got in mind here. One is 1903, which is when Hercules Monaco was
What a
founded.
name. Hercules Monaco. Is
I
that
know,
for
that's
real?
proper
That's
alpha
amazing.
male, isn't it?
Yeah, mate. You can imagine him going into the casino in Monte Carlo, can't you?
Literally. But then 2 years later, in 1919, AS Monaco Football was born and founded. 5 years later, Association Sportive de Monaco was created, and I think that was in 1924, August the 24th to be precise. But it sounds like the formation was basically amongst regional clubs in Monaco initially, and then that's when they kind of went full hell for leather on the football division in 1924. And yeah, we touched on it there. Like they're not actually French; they're their own independent city state, and that's why there's a team similar to them called Vaduz, which is a Liechtenstein team, and they play in the Swiss football leagues because Liechtenstein doesn't have a professional league, and it's the same. Monaco doesn't actually have its own domestic league, so geographically makes sense. That's why they're part of the French Football Federation. In terms of their kind of foundations, obviously, official founding day on their website is 2024. 2024, sorry, 1924. And they spent a few years kind of navigating the amateur leagues in French football and around the regions. But in 1933, that's when they were actually invited by the French Football Federation to take part in their professional leagues. So that's great, right? Like they're kind of navigating the amateur leagues, get the call up. They said yes. They then got relegated in their first season, so they went straight back down into the amateur divisions, and they spent the next few years kind of navigating there. It was 1948 where they then rejoined professional football, and they got promotion into the French second division, and then managed that for a few years, but then they actually earned promotion to Liga in 1953, and I think that's kind of the start of their top tier journey as a football club. They had a lot of success in the 60s through to the 80s, and a turbulent period in the 2000s, which I'll talk about in a second. But they won their first league title in the 60-61 campaign. They then followed that up with a domestic double the season after in 62-63. And they had lots of success in the 70s and 80s, winning the league titles in 77, 78, 81, 82, as well as their domestic cups in 79-80 season and the 84-85 season. My man, Arsene Wenger, came in 1987, my French father.
Is he still
And
pushing that stupid fucking offside law, is he?
I think he is, yeah. I'm a bit
Okay.
concerned about my French dad in his retirement era. But yeah, he came in with a bang. In his first season in 87, 88, he won the league title with them. And his period at Monaco, like I hear a lot about George Weah and stuff, especially from like my dad and stuff. But Glenn Hoddle's another famous player that I think their relationship was spoken about a lot. Jurgen Klinsmann was involved in that period. And yeah, Wenger won the 1991 Coupe de France with them as well. But in 1992, he unfortunately lost the European Cup Winners' Cup to Werder Bremen. He then famously left in 1994 to go to Japan before coming to the Arsenal. But yeah, the 2000s is where their period as a football club really gets interesting. So 2003-04 season is famous for Porto winning the Champions League, right? I think a lot of people forget it was Monaco that they beat in the final and stand out. Well, I mean, their run to that final, they beat obviously Real Madrid, they beat Chelsea. Like as an Arsenal fan, I'm looking back at that thinking,
Ah, you should have won the Champions League that year, man. I
yeah,
mean, that's
literally.
the invincible season,
Yeah, of course. Yeah, lost to Chelsea in the semis.
of
Was it
course.
the semi
Oh,
quarters?
Monaco beat Chelsea in the semis. You lost in the
Yeah, we
quarters.
lost in the quarters. So yeah, look back at that with my Arsenal hat on, thinking what if? But yeah, kind of going back through the history books, looking at players from that campaign. Fernando Morientes, I think a famous.
I think I want to say that Morientes scored the winner against Real Madrid in the quarterfinal and was on loan from Real Madrid. I
Yeah,
think.
you're right. Ludovic Juli is another one. I think I mostly remember him because of his Barcelona period. To be fair,
Yeah.
but yeah, Patrice Evra, another one. Obviously, Went to Man United shortly after, and Jerome Roffin's one where I don't know if he'll be like a famous player that people remember. But for whatever reason, when I saw his name, I was like, oh, I recognize him. But I don't know if that was because I used to be a Pro Evolution Soccer bang out in my youth. But yeah, that was obviously a great campaign for them getting to the final. But I think that was the start of a lot of financial difficulties for them through the 2000s, where they struggled quite a bit. And then in 2010-11, they actually got relegated. And it was shortly after that, though, where they had a Russian billionaire, Dmitry Rybolovlev, who came in and purchased a majority stake in Monaco. And that was when, you might remember, there's a period in like the 2010s onwards where they kind of went a bit mad with their spending and built together an unbelievable squad, to be fair. Mr. Dilly Ding, Dilly Dong himself was the manager in
He
the
took over
20.
them when they were in League Two, didn't he?
He did,
Or
yeah.
sorry, League Two.
Ligue 1, correct. He's the man that helped them secure promotion back to Liga in 2012-13 when they won the league. And then following that campaign, that's when they started to splash the cash. They signed James Rodriguez, Radamel Falcao for, at the time, I think, like, it doesn't sound enormous right now, talking about in 2025, but I feel like it was 50 million for him back then, which in 2013 was a hell of a lot of money. And you look at that team around then where you've got those two signings, they had the likes of João Moutinho, Berbatov, Ricardo Carvalho, a young Anthony Martial before his move to Man United.
At the time was the most expensive teenager, I think, to
He
move
was,
at the
yeah.
time. Yeah.
You then fast forward to kind of 2016 onwards, and that's where Leonardo Jardim came in, and he essentially ended PSG's dominance. They won the league title in 16-17, and that team was star-studded, weren't it? I mean, they won the league, obviously, but they kind of put themselves on the map in Europe with their campaign in the Champions League. They got to the semi-finals, and on that run, they beat Man City, they beat Dortmund, but then lost to Juventus. But that team was star-studded, like Mbappe, Bernardo Silva, Falcao, Fabinho, Thomas Lamar's one. Like, I don't think
Mm.
people remember him as like one of the star-studded players, but from my Arsenal lens, like
You were getting hugely linked with him for stupid money,
I'm
weren't
sure
you?
we bid something like 90 mil for him, but
Yeah, I
he's
think you
someone that
did.
was really good for them in that season. And then, yeah, after they won the league, I think over the next kind of two, three transfer
Wasn't
windows,
he at Atletico Madrid though when you bid that? I want to say maybe.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the kind of start of them getting picked apart, that team, really. Obviously, Bernardo Silva, Benjamin Mendy went to Man City, Mbappe went on loan to PSG with the kind of extortionate buyout in there. Fabinho went to Liverpool the season after. So yeah, that team just got completely dismantled. And yeah, in terms of them now, I mean, this is the thing, like, as a football club, obviously we touched on there, like they're not technically French, right? And I think a lot of the limelight in France has been around PSG, Marseille, Lille. More recently, we covered have won the league, but Monaco have pretty much established themselves as one of the big names in that in the French Football Federation now. In terms of this season, they're third in Liga. They're 10 points behind PSG and Marseille are sat in second. And in the Champions League, Arsenal beat them recently 3-0. But with 2 games to go, they are not doing great. They're 16th in the table on 10 points. Just one final thing for me in terms of their stadium. Yeah, their stadium is one that I recognised, the Stade Louis. That hosted the UEFA Super Cup from 1998 to 2012. So I was wondering, like, why do I recognise that stadium, even though it's so small with the capacity of 16,000? But that's why it was famous for hosting the UEFA Super Cup for many years before they kind of went into this rotational stuff of giving it to different countries. So that is the lowdown on AS Monaco.
Yeah, I wonder. I was thinking about this last night, the fact they always had the Super Cup, and obviously it was a chance for the UEFA bigwigs to go to Monaco. I'm surprised in hindsight that they stopped doing that and started
I
giving
am
the
as well.
game correctly to people around the globe. That is the right sort of UEFA game to be throwing to some of the smaller nations who wouldn't normally have the chance to host a European final. I completely get that. They knocked you out of the Champions League a few years ago, I want to say.
They did
They
actually,
won
yeah. I'm sure.
3-1. I'm sure they won 3-1 at your place and you won 2-0 there. And the away goals rule was still in place.
Yeah, that rings a bell actually. I think that
We
was like
played them in
2015, maybe.
we played them in the Champions League 16-17 as well, where they went on to get to the semi-final and it was kind of Mbappe broke out. No, I did not see Kylian Mbappe play for Monaco at Tottenham at Wembley in the opening group stage game. Wasn't in the squad. I presume like kind of broke through as the season was going on. When we played them in match day 5, he was only a substitute as well. One that stood out when we played them that night at Wembley was Bernardo Silva. I was, oh my God, go and buy him.
Yeah.
Wow, what a player. And has shown what a great player he is. The only other thing I wanted to touch on what you explained in terms of their history was when you was talking about Wenger, and I was thinking this is kind of a bit of a Patreon plug. We did a podcast on Marseille not long ago about the some of the I was going to say financial irregularities, more like match fixing irregularities actually with Marseille. And Wenger to this day is still so mad about what happened when he was manager of Monaco because he thinks that they should have been winning everything because essentially Marseille were cheating. And we covered that. I think back in sort of November we did a piece on Marseille and the irregularities at that time. Yeah, interesting football club. The other thing I wanted to mention was you mentioned Vaduz, who play in Liechtenstein. They are, as far as I'm aware, the ultimate football manager challenge, by the way.
Why is that?
So Vaduz play in Switzerland. And do you remember we covered a little while ago about the Welsh clubs
Yep.
potentially looking to join the Welsh League Cup to give them a chance of qualifying for Europe? So Vaduz can only qualify for Europe if they win the Liechtenstein Cup. So you don't have a league
But
in
they've got a domestic
Liechtenstein,
cup.
but they do have a cup. So the only way to win the Champions League with Vaduz, stop laughing at the back on football. It's not real. It's a fucking game, right? The only way to win the Champions League is you've got to win the Liechtenstein Cup, and then you've got to win the Conference League and Europa League. This is the only way you climb in. You can't qualify for the Champions League or the Europa League unless you win the one that's kind of below. So you've
Oh
got to
wow.
win the three competitions in order. So if you
Well,
want like the wildest football manager challenge, I'm pretty sure that's correct.
that's
I'm
the rest
sure
of
I've
my
heard
day
that.
sorted. Downloading Football Manager right now.
Won't be a day, mate. It'll be the rest of your year, pal. I should imagine. I don't know how much money you'll be able to spend on transfers, but yeah, you never know your luck, mate. Maybe you'll get an oligarch or something like that. Right. On this day, I decided that I wanted to do a Carabao Cup semi-final first leg if I could find one.
What
And I
year
think
did
I
you say
found a
we're
good
going
one
to?
from 2013. And Arsenal don't feature Clates, so you can sit back and relax.
I know. The minute I sit back
Well,
and
they
relax, you're
kind
going to
of
come in
do.
with the
They kind of
punchline.
are part of this story. You can't really ignore it. Because on this day in 2013, League Two, Bradford City hosted a struggling and Clayton's face. For the benefit of those in the audience, like piss off, James. Hosted a struggling Aston Villa in what at the time was the Capital One Cup semi-final first leg at Valley Parade. And why do Arsenal feature in the story? Well, because Bradford had knocked out Arsenal on penalties in the quarterfinals. They also, in the last 16, knocked out a Wigan Athletic on penalties, who were also a Premier League side. And of course, Wigan would go on to win the FA Cup that season by beating Manchester City in the final. So they'd already taken the scalps of two Premier League sides to get to this. The memory of a League Two side being in a major English domestic cup semi-final was must-watch television, I felt at the time. The only thing that had come close was when Chesterfield, who were of the third tier, got to the FA Cup semis in 1997. I remember we played at Norwich in the last 16 of the of the EFL Cup that year, and we lost. And the amount of teams went out that night, it was like, oh my God, this draw has opened up ridiculously. Um, but and especially when you saw the drawing, it's like, oh, Arsenal got Bradford. You're like, ah, you lucky
Yeah.
bastards. Yeah, yeah, we couldn't have had that luck.
I
As it
still think
turned
of
out, Villa
Jovino's miss.
twatted Norwich. So Bradford would play Villa. Villa were really struggling at the time under Paul Lambert in the Premier League. But Bradford, I guess, were given a chance because they'd already knocked out two other Premier League teams, right? So they played Villa in the first leg, and clearly you're probably thinking they need to put a sizable victory on the board. They had a couple of lads up front. You might remember the names. You might remember Naki Wells, Clates.
Name rings a bell, yeah.
Naki Wells. I don't think you remember too much others. The other two that I remember was Matt Duke, who played in goal. He very briefly played for Hull. I'm pretty sure. And he made a lot of saves across the two legs. And they had a lad up front called James Hansen,
No, don't
who they
remember
used to
that name.
call Big Jim, 6'4" forward,
Proper
your
Barclays forward.
what you expect in League Two. I mean, I think he played over 250 times for Bradford, got sort of like 70 odd goals or so. So he was kind of a distinguished player there for a really long time. I think you also have to remember Bradford aren't really a League Two club in essence. They're bigger than that. Right? You go to Valley Parade and you've got, I was going to say two sides of the ground. I want to say 1 3/4 sides of the ground is quite big. The rest of it's pokey. But obviously, we remember them in the Premier League in 1999, 2000, and 2000, 2001. Part of the story to this starts from there because Bradford obviously stayed up very famously, beat Liverpool on the final day of the 2000 season. David Wetherell scored the only goal. Wimbledon went down at their expense. The chain reaction of what happened to Wimbledon, MK Dons, etc. after that. Bradford stayed up, but then tried to spend and started buying people like Benito Carbone they couldn't really afford. So then when they went down fairly disastrously the next season, they went down very comfortably. You know what happened next. And actually, 25 odd years on, they haven't really recovered. Never been close to coming back. And that's not to say they're size of club that should be in the Premier League, but not size of club that should be in the fourth tier of the food chain, if you will. So although they're a League Two side going into this semi, they're a little bit bigger than that, I'd say. Anyway, Wells puts them in front. 20 minutes in, much to the fear of Villa fans, but of course you know that Villa have got more quality, and both teams have good chances. Christian Benteke is up front for Villa. He
Oh,
misses
wow.
loads. Duke made a couple of good saves from him, but I think he'd had like 4 efforts on goal in the first 20 minutes or so. The Villa lineup that day, for the record, was Shay Given was in goal. Shay Given was a magnificent goalkeeper, but not by this point, I should add. Kieran Clark at the back, Bennett, Nathan Baker, Matt Lowton. I mean, it's not exactly Villa. Villa fans should look at their, when they're playing. The reason we covered Monaco is because they're playing Villa in the Champions League in a couple of weeks. Should remember these sort of lineups when they play in the Champions League. Charles and Zogbia.
I thought he was a good
That
player.
Charles and Zogbia was a good player. Remembered most fondly, I think, for a goal scored for Wigan against Arsenal. Fabian Delph was probably the star of this team,
Yeah.
who was real box to box energy player at this point, really young. Barry Bannon is still playing
Oh,
at
midfield of lefties.
Sheffield Wednesday. Andreas Weimann is still playing in the Championship as well. And Gabriel Agbonlahor you can find daily moaning on Talkshire, I believe. Darren Bent was a substitute and missed a glorious chance for Villa towards the end. Bradford went two up through Rory McCardle with 13 minutes to go. And it's at that point you go, could they? Could they? Unfortunately for them, Vyman pulled a goal back with 8 minutes to go, which is an outrageously good decision from the linesman, by the way, because he looks offside by absolute miles. And he's not. We don't need VAR, thank you very much. But Cole McHugh would power in a ridiculous header, and they were a big threat from set play to give Bradford a remarkable 3-1 victory on the night. You want to know what happened in the second leg, right?
I do. You're going to wait until whenever that day is to do on this day, aren't you?
No, I'm going to tell you, but I
All
tell
right.
you what struck out for me most when I watched the highlights back last night. And again, this is a reminder for Villa fans. So Villa Park's obviously packed for the second leg, and they're really struggling in the league. This is a really not a good Aston Villa, right? And ultimately, they'd go down in like 2016. I think I've got that right, with a disastrous second half of the season. When they come out, they're playing Bradford at home, League Two side, Bradford at home, League Cup semi final, and every fan's got a flag. Now, I don't want to be critical of that, but I think Villa fans again should remember where they were 12 years ago when they're playing Monaco in the Champions League, trying to finish in the top eight. And there's a strong possibility Villa do. Villa probably need one win to
Yeah.
confirm top eight in the Champions League. It's massive flat, and you can see the Bradford players when they're coming out and like, the fuck is this? Phil Parkinson, who was the manager and managed several clubs, is on the touch, and you can see he's taking it all in, and he's got that look on him as if like it don't even matter if we get overturned here. Like how remarkable is it to be here in this atmosphere? And when Villa Park's a good atmosphere, it's
Yeah,
really
it
good
is.
atmosphere, by the way.
Nice stadium.
but it was must watch because you've got a League Two team has essentially got 2 goal advantage over a Premier League team. So it's kind of like perfectly set up. I think most people still thought Villa would do it, and this kind of romantic end would happen. Villa scored in the first half. They throw complete caution to win in the second, but Bradford have chances,
Oh,
on
really?
the counter, and then Hansen scored towards the end to make it 1-1 on the night. They could have even gone in front as well, but it is kind of attack v defense game. Vyman scores in the 89th minute to make it 2-1 on the night, and you can imagine what injury time is like.
Oh, squeaky bum time, Jesus.
But in that injury time, Villa didn't really create a massive big chance. And so Bradford went through to the final 4-3 on aggregate.
Oh, wow.
Remarkable. So you've got League Two, Bradford City in the final. Remember who they played?
Wait, do you say was that Wigan?
No, Wigan won the FA Cup.
Oh, no, 2013. I can't remember. I couldn't remember that Bradford got to the final.
Well, interestingly, if this team ever got to the League Cup final again, I don't know if they'd be allowed to qualify for Europe because they might have to win the competition
Oh,
in
is
their
it
own country.
Swansea?
Michael
Oh,
Laudrup,
shit.
Swansea
Forgot.
City
Yeah.
played Bradford in the final. They,
Was it
in
like 4
fairness,
nil or something?
five.
Yeah, I think I do briefly remember that now.
Swansea beat them 5-0 in the final. Nathan Dyer famously arguing about wanting to take the penalty because he was already scored twice, and I don't think anyone had scored a hat trick in the League Cup final. I don't
Oh,
think. In
right.
any case, the idea that Nathan Dyer was going to score a hat trick in the League Cup final,
I
Nathan Dyer, who never went on to win anything else in his career except a Premier League title with Leicester
yeah.
City, by the way, because he was part of that squad. Whenever you see the Leicester trophy lift, he's right at the front. I'm like, you cheeky twat. No one can remember you playing for Leicester, but you're right at the front on loan from Swansea. That was a good Swansea team,
I
right? That
really
was the
enjoyed
Michu
watching them.
season.
It was, yeah. But even prior to Michu coming in under Rodgers, I really enjoyed watching that Swansea team, especially with like
And
Leon Britton, Joe Allen in midfield.
they very much got to the final on merit. They'd won at Anfield in the last 16 and didn't concede to Chelsea over 2 legs in the semi-final. They won 2-0 at Stamford Bridge. Danny Graham definitely scored one. He might have even got both, maybe, I think. And then they drew 0-0 at the Liberty in the second leg, which was the famous incident with Eden Hazard and the ball boy.
Ah, yes.
Eden Hazard, who's I believe it's his birthday today, I think.
Happy birthday, Eden. 34,
34.
terrorizing my Arsenal team for a few years.
34, Eden
Yeah, that's
Hazard.
mad. So young.
What a player.
All the
Yeah,
nostalgia in there.
yeah, there's a few little cheeky little links in there. So yeah, Bradford ultimately, unfortunately, lost 5-0 quite badly to Swansea in the final, but a remarkable story for a League Two team to get to a major English domestic final, particularly when you look at, say, the size of the 4 teams who are in it this year. And it is getting harder now, I think, with the kind of the where City have really changed the narrative, I think, over the last few years. It's just become so difficult to win these trophies. I mean, City and Liverpool basically completely dominated this competition.
Yeah.
City, Liverpool, Chelsea
Trying to think
completely dominated this competition.
who was the last team
I think
outside
it
of the
might even
Premier
be
League?
those 3 teams won, and Manchester United beat Newcastle.
Yeah,
It
that
might
was a
just be
couple of years.
them
Yeah. Trying to
since
think
that Swansea final, I think.
what was the last team outside of the Premier League to get to like the semis? Probably then, right?
League, it's not that uncommon, I think, for a championship team to get to, say, a League Cup semi. Middlesbrough played Chelsea last year.
Ah, okay.
Um, so I mean, it's not that uncommon for a championship team to get to a domestic cup semi-final.
But to the final, it's then a different
For a League Two club
kettle
to
of
get to
fish.
the final,
I'd love
that's
to know from a Bradford fan, like what was the vibe kind of on the day, like how they processed the result, like were they just happy to kind of be there, were they
I'd,
gutted? Like, yeah, I'd love to
I'd,
know.
I'd be interested to know if we have got any Bradford listeners or viewers. I'm sure we do because they're a well-supported club, actually. Like even where they are, still average attendance is like well over 10,000 and stuff. I'd be interested to know what they felt was bigger, whether it was the semi-final against Villa or the final day against Liverpool in 2000.
Let us know.
Or even if it was they reflect on maybe even the championship promotion the year before when they finished second. If you ever want a good laugh, just get yourself on YouTube and search for Stuart McCall falling off a car. So they're in the car park outside Valley Parade, all celebrating. They're all pissed up, and Stuart McCall tries to climb on a car, and it's the most staggered and magnificent falling off a car you've ever seen. Stuart McCall was a great player, famously for Scotland and Everton prior to being Bradford. Also went on and managed Bradford, I believe, as well. That's on this day. It's from 2013 when Villa failed to make a cup final because they lost to a side in League Two.
Nicely done.
Tomorrow, clash of the correspondents: Manchester United versus Southampton with Gary Robinson and Matt Samuel. It is a particularly hard one for Matt, as I'm sure you can understand at this moment. You want to watch it and listen to it just to see Gary's shock when me and Matt suggest that actually Bruno Fernandes probably should be a captaincy consideration in game week 21. We've also on Patreon tomorrow got a Money in Football podcast on Ineos. More stories coming out this week, which is interesting, which we'll cover on that. We don't cover on Clash of Correspondents about the potential availability of the likes of Kobe Minu and Alejandro Garnacho now. It sounds like United have got the sell. We're doing Ineos because they're kind of stripping all the expenses away from the football club. Maybe this is an indication of part why. That's available from basic plus tier Patreon as well. And obviously on Patreon today, we'll get Suj's thoughts on what's happening with Lopetegui
Yeah,
as
I'm
well.
sure there will be updates by the time you record that. Lovely
Super
stuff.
stuff. Thank you very much, Clayton. Be nice to each other, everyone. Smash a like, hit the sub, cue music, please, man child.